Is this thing on? Yes, it is. Welcome to my first YouTube video / live stream. Today we'll be talking about the Kingroon KP5L, going over all the details on it, answering your questions, and just here to have a good time. So let's just jump right into it. Welcome! How's everyone doing? I'm not gonna lie, I could not figure out how to get the text on screen. YouTube, we'll figure out for next stream. But hey, how is everyone doing? We have all kinds of people in chat. Let's see, we got Griffin's Closet Print Farm. Welcome in, Bert. See, okay, all your names are gonna be different. K2 is still K2. Maker Viking is Maker Viking. Welcome in. And of course, Hezliz, who is not a moderator. Let me make that a thing. There you go. NHU, welcome in. So, let me pull up my notes. Perfect. All right, well, welcome to Hedgehog Makes. My name is Austin, aka Zombie Hedgehog. Today we're going to be going over my experience with the KP5L from Kingroon. I'm streaming this on YouTube, so I can answer any questions and kind of have a conversation live, because there is a lot to talk about, and I wanted you all to be here. So, what is this printer? I bought this because I was kind of intrigued. It's not your typical printer for a few reasons. It's far different than Ender 3. So I picked up the KP3S, which is there in the background. It's a 180 bed slinger from Kingroon. It has linear rails on the X and Y. And it was intriguing because one of the issues that I have with a lot of printers is that they have V-wheels. V-wheels take a little bit of extra care, they take maintenance, and more importantly, they take calibration. So the KP3S from Kingroon eliminated that on the X and Y and installed linear rails instead, which I thought was a great idea. Nero originally reviewed it, and then I saw it. I was like, you know what? For the price, I'm gonna give it a try, and it has been a great experience. Absolutely great experience. I've done some upgrades on it. Everything seems to work just well. A couple of quirks, but it is what it is. It's a cheap printer. So, when I saw that this was a thing, I immediately looked at it. There's barely any reviews on it. No one's really using this thing. There's a bunch of different versions of it. And it's just so neat. Just a neat little printer, and it's a big printer. So, yes, Liz, you are the queen. Of course. So the differences between this and the KP3S are pretty night and day. It's a lot bigger. It's 300 by 300 versus the 180. It has dual Z. It's just a bigger printer. It has glass too. So it's interesting because it shares the same tool head, same exact tool head, and the same controller, but it's just a different frame. So we will get to that. I actually unboxed this printer live on Twitch. This was about 2 months ago now. It was pretty fun. I think a lot of you guys were there, at least watching this stream live. It was a pretty good time. We unboxed it, assembled it, took it apart, kind of commented on all the build quality, and it was good. It was decent out of the box. I didn't have any super major thoughts on it at the time. It seemed like it just would work, and it did. Yeah, I was able to get it working pretty quickly. Nick Viking says, remember to like the stream. Yes, like the stream. I did not... actually, I didn't even share it on YouTube. Liz, you can share it on Twitch. Not Twitch, Twitter. I'm so used to streaming with my other platform. It's a little bit different. This is just like raw OBS. It's a little bit of a downgrade, to be honest. But we'll get through it. You'll tweet perfect. You're spamming everywhere. Okay, well, I don't use spamming. The reason why I'm streaming on YouTube instead of Twitch for once is because I wanted a more like serious platform and somewhere where I could store all of my videos. So when I stream on here, I'll be going over either builds, I'll be building my Voron on here, I'll be building all my printers. Anytime that I want to keep the content for future use, I'll be streaming here. That's the plan. And of course, I will release videos. I'll be upgrading this. We'll do a bunch of stuff. In good time, we'll do a bunch of stuff. So, for this printer, I want to break it up into 3 sections. I thought it was pretty natural, and I have a lot of good categories. So we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Oh, and trust me, there's a lot to talk about in each. So, my overall experience with this printer, I'd say has been positive. But I've had a little bit of experience with 3D printers at this point, so what I think is doable might not be for other people. So I'm trying to approach it right now from either a beginner or maybe even someone with a little bit of experience that might run into some issues. All right. So Discord. Before I begin, make sure to like and subscribe. I will be doing some more content on here. All the links are in the description. I have the PolyMaker Discord where I typically hang out. There is my Patreon. I'm starting that up. I have a custom private server on Discord that you can join and get printer advice, printer help, and hang out there. Kieran says, I'm sure you can print a bigger hedgehog. You think so? In fact, yeah, we'll get to it, but this isn't actually that big. I could probably print that on one of the smaller printers. It's a little bit big. It's big. So, how are you guys doing today? Is everything good so far? Let me see. Gonna have to move some stuff around. Close to this. So yeah, what have I been up to? I do a lot of printer maintenance and modding, and now I'm starting to do 3D printing. I like to get all of my printers up to a good working state before I start doing any major projects or printing on them. So I'm fairly new to 3D printing. I've been doing this for less than a year. And throughout that time, I've been kind of non-stop going through all the different things about 3D printers, and I've joined all kinds of communities, and it's been a great experience. The whole community vibe is great. Fix and Do subscribed and then liked. What a rebel. Make If I Can says you'll print it on Ymir. Oh my god. That's like, you're probably actually going to need the 3 kg spools. That's hilarious. Okay, well, let me first show off the prints, because that's what the most important thing about the printer is. What can it print? Alright, so I have a couple to show you. I'm actually going to switch over and try out this over here. So this, starting off, is a Toys for Tot train. So this is printed for the IC3D Toys for Tots for 2020. This is pretty much straight off the printer. I believe, yeah, this was PolyMaker PLA Pro Yellow. And really, it's a good print. I'm not gonna be able to show you like major layer lines on here, but it's pretty dang solid. You can kind of see the walls and you can kind of see the features, but like, look at that. Now you'll see some ringing. This printer does have a little bit of ringing. Oh yeah, and this one was printed with a weird profile. I was trying to do outer walls first, but this is a pretty typical quality from the printer. In fact, I have another one over here that I reprinted without that, and it's all good too. So that's one of the more detailed, not detailed prints, but one of the ones I've been printing the most of recently. So I have a pretty good idea of how it prints compared to other printers, and it's good. This is a, oh man, what do they call this one? This is the glitch planter over on Printables. And I will have the link for all these models in the description after. But yeah, this was printed in not base mode. I printed it solid. On the inside, you will notice some inconsistent extrusion. It's very visible on the inside, which is interesting because the outside, printed like this, it's nearly flawless. This is Filament. This is their Galaxy Silver, whatever it's called. So nope, close. It's called yeah, Galaxy Silver PLA. So that printed phenomenally. I was actually really impressed with how this printed. So that's a good one. This I recently printed. I just got a spool of Sparta 3D Galaxy Red in, and I figured, what's the best thing to print? This is from the creator of the Egg vehicles. This is just one of the fire trucks scaled up to 300%. So works fine, of course it's going to work because the clearances are designed for a smaller print. But yeah, also looks really good. Incredibly good. Another print that I was very impressed on. But then again, you see a little bit of ringing. Yeah, that's the one Maker Viking. A very cool creator. The actual layers, very consistent. Just again, ringing. And this was printed on its side, so you'll see some artifacts like that. This one wasn't really supposed to work, but it ended up working fine. It is a filament holder by, this is Mad Monkey over on Printables. And this is actually printed in Kingroon Filament. This is their clear. I was a little bit aggressive on removing the supports, and I did snap it on this side right here. But other than that, it fully works and has the clearances perfectly fine, nice and snug. And most importantly, it looks good. But it has a little bit of ringing. There we go. Now getting on to the bigger models. This is a common test print that I do. It's just a vase mode rocket. So it's vase mode. I printed it at 0.8 line width. So it's a little bit extra strong. You know, it takes a lot of effort to squish. And looking at the Z, very few artifacts. You're not really going to be able to see it on camera. Maybe. But it's, just take my word for it, it's pretty dang good. Honestly, a little more consistent and even than some of my other printers. So that was nice to see. This is Treebeard by Photosmint. Printed in some rainbow filament that I got off Amazon, I forget the name. But yeah, Treebeard, Photos Mint, printed. I don't know what scale this is, but it's big. This took a while to print. Does it squeak? It does not squeak. But yeah, that's a nice one. Very, very detailed. You know, the actual quality and resolution of the print is good. So I thought this one was really nice. It came out a lot better than I expected, especially all the little leaves on the top. Now moving around, I've snapped some of them off, but it can get to be, you know, the little tiny leaves on the top. They printed out just fine. It helps that the model is a little bit textured, but this one, my final print that I just did, it came off the printer today. I woke up to it, it was an overnight print. This is my newest model that I printed, the Cute Hedgehog by Maker Viking over here in chat. You can find this on Printables. It is a really clean print. And this is using the rainbow filament at Sparta 3D. Very, very, very clean, very smooth. This is a silk filament, so it's hard to see, but pretty dang good. At least for a like typical printer. Like the filament. Yeah, the back looks like really good. Look at that. I hit the color changing perfect. And this was actually printed hollow with 5 walls, but using lightning infill. That's the first time I've tried out lightning for something this big, and it worked perfectly fine. So, happy with all these test prints. I printed some more stuff on it too, but I don't have every single model I printed. And there's a lot of stuff I haven't printed because, well, we'll get into that in a bit. Yeah, what do you think so far? I use fuzzy skin. I wonder how that would look. Fuzzy skin might be interesting on this model. The spikes, though, might not be. Spikes aren't fuzzy. It'd be kind of cool if you could, you can select what areas you want fuzzy. Maybe we'll add that in the future. You can paint on, like, the fuzzy skin. That's always neat. Or use a slicer that adds texture. But yeah, I could not be happier. It went through the whole, this is silk filament. People have a lot of issues with silk, just in general. No clogging whatsoever. We did have one issue. I don't know if you can spot it yet, but we'll talk about that when we get to the negatives of the printer. But yeah, line these back up so you can see them as I go along. This over here. Sure, look at that. Applied. It's right over here. All right. So I had 3 categories to talk about the printer. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start with the good things. Get them all out of the way because, like I said, you can print some pretty dang cool things on here. And this is essentially stock, out of the box experience, at least for print quality. I'll note that this is an upgraded version of the printer. There's different versions. I got this one discounted on Amazon because I think this is version 2, and now they're on version 3. But they're not like known versions, they're silent versions. They just kind of restock some new SKUs without changing their model name. This one I had to install the tensioners on the X and Y axis by myself. They sent me the kit, also the filament runout sensor that has clips on it now. So if you go back and watch my video on Twitch, the unboxing, you can skip around, but it's a different printer, slightly different, and you'll see everything about the printer. I did a complete teardown. I'm not going to do that today, but I looked at the board. The board is a KP3, same exact thing as the KP3S. just a little bit different wiring. They use their own power supply this time. I think they did on the Kingroon too, but it's a different power supply. And we'll definitely talk about that. So any questions so far on the printer? It seems like everyone has kind of, you know, it's hard to complain. Like, I can't complain about any of these prints. I really can't. Oh, one more print. How'd I miss this one? This is part of a trash walker trash can. So it's supposed to have legs as well, but I didn't get around to printing that yet. I had a couple of issues with this one, but I can explain why. This is PolyMaker Silk Blue, printed nearly a whole kilogram. This is probably about 850 or so grams of filament. And you might have spotted the issue. This is big and heavy. At the top, we have a layer shift. And the very top, I don't quite know what happened, but I think, yeah, it layer shifted enough, so I just stopped the print. How tall is it? It's tall. I would not be able to print this on probably any of my other, like, normal printers. Expensive trash can. Yes, quite so. But hey, I use it. I store all of my my prints in there that have issues. The reason why these trains are in here, because there's a couple of, I used the wrong profile on them, so they didn't print quite up to the IC3D standards, but that's okay. I got plenty of other ones. I got the whole train collection over here. It's growing pretty fast. Very happy to be printing them. How tall is this? My tape measure is not around. It is tall. This is the maker of the Hero Me. I think it's I'm not going to say his name wrong, but the creator of the Hero Me series, I think Media Man on printables, posted a remix of that, and it's even bigger, I think. At least a single layer shift. Yes, yeah. And that's the thing about layer shift. They usually happen for a reason, right? And I'm guessing it just didn't have enough power at that speed and height. There's a lot of stuff that can happen. In fact, the nozzle can just kind of hit the surface and then cause a little bit of a stall. And it'll keep printing, so. That one was a long print too. And again, that was all silk. No issues. In fact, we can keep that in the background. Right up here. Anything else that I printed on there? I kind of just print stuff and store it wherever. What else did I print? I think that was it in this room from this printer. That's a good enough representation. You take my word for it, it prints well. Okay? Let's talk about the goods. The KP5L, it's a 300 by 300 on the build plate by 330 on the Z. A lot of people will never need that height, but it's nice to have in case you need it. If you're doing like a really tall vase or something, having a little bit of extra Z is much better than not having enough Z, even if you don't use it. Now, it does come with issues. The taller you go, the more potential issues might come up with, like this trash can. Probably only had an issue because of how tall it was, but it could have also been because of how heavy it was at the same time. But it's a good size printer, and you can print small things on there. Like, I printed this, right? And it printed really good. This, you can print normal size stuff. I had some swatch trucks I printed on here as well. Actually, I think on there. Not sure, but if you're interested in the swatch truck, I can link that in the description too. This is my calibration print. I test this printout on every single filament before I print something, just to make sure it prints well. And print off a bunch in this one, just to calibrate it. So I guess, yeah, I'll talk about it in the future, but I did have to calibrate the E-steps on here, and you are not able to do that on the printer. So keep that in mind. You cannot adjust the E-steps, but I have a section to talk about that. All right, let me check. Okay. Notes up. I wrote up a whole section. I might publish the notes on this. I'll put it on my Discord as like a document or something just to put out. And I will be sending this over to Kingroon after as well, just to share my thoughts with them. I'm an engineer, so I like to fix things and make things. And when I see design flaws, I like to point them out. Not as a way of insulting anyone, but a way of improving the quality. I want to see printers become better. I want manufacturers to start printing or designing printers that are better. And this printer is a really good step in that direction. So I want to improve this printer, whatever it takes. All right, so big build volume. You can either print really tall or really wide. Choice is yours, or really small. Doesn't matter. I didn't add this to my notes, but it's very compact. It's almost the same size as a Ender 3. It's a little bit wider and a little bit longer. The difference is that the bed extends a ton in either direction. But when it's stationary, you can store this in almost the same spot as an Ender 3. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's a little bit taller and a little bit wider. The direct drive tool head. This is the Kingroon Special. It's on their KP3S. A lot of people use it. A lot of people love it. It has some minor flaws, but overall, it prints well. And that's all that, not all that matters, but it's very important that it prints well. It has a couple of little issues, but it prints very well. And it's consistent. So it is a Titan extruder clone. It's a clone. I took it apart, and if you've seen the Mirage C video where he talks about the dual gear system, this is not a dual gear extruder, meaning there's only one drive gear on the filament. The other gear is an idler. But it's also a gear reduction. So it's a, I think, 3 to 1 or 5 to 1. It's a pretty heavy gear reduction, and it's only being extruded from one gear. And that gear is pressed on. That might be one of the reasons why these prints are so good and consistent, is because the extruder is very basic, which is backwards thinking, because you'd think you'd want a dual gear extruder. I'm not gonna get to that in this video, but do check out Mirage C, his latest, at the time of recording, video on surface quality, or whatever he called it. That is a very good video to watch, and this printer does not have the same traits as the extruders he talks about. So I just found that out, and I was kind of thinking about it. I'll post a little bit more in the Discord if you're interested. It has a V5 hot end, so not a V6. It takes MK8 nozzles, the same thing as a Creality printer. It can be upgraded, but by stock it's a V5. You can throw on a V6 nozzle. You will have to adjust your Z offset, maybe do a little bit of tweaking, but stock it's a V5 with MK8 nozzle. Yeah, it's pretty easy to load. The actual gear for moving stuff manually is right here, and it's all open. It's easy. I like it. Dual lead screws, you kind of need it at this size. It's a necessity, but it's dual lead screws with dual motors driven off of the same stepper driver. So there's no dual drivers, and there's no probe. So it is kind of very, very basic dual Z, but seems to work well, and it's very consistent when it gets to the right height. The bed is glass, so it's going to be flat. For beginners, that is beneficial to have a nice flat build surface, easier to get good first layers. Once you get it kind of level, you don't have to worry about it until it becomes unlevel, which we can talk about, but when you get level, it's just level. The corners aren't significantly higher like a PEI sheet. So that's why glass is used for the most part. It's very, very flat. Other quirks to it, but it's nice to have a flat surface to reference off of. And it's easy to level. And now, the best feature of this printer, the reason why I got it, the rails. The whole frame and motion system is probably the best that I've seen in a bed slinger. So I really like this system. These are called SGR rails. Hey Ash, welcome in. These are SGR rails. They're not... Hello, I have a cat. I guess we'll have a cat for a minute. They are not linear rails. They're not linear rods. They're not V-wheels. But they're a weird hybrid between all of them. And it's really cool. And extrusion. You told Ginger to show up? Yes, she's been kind of wanting attention. Oh, everyone loves Ginger. Say hi, Ginger. Ginger's probably going to make my shirt very full of hair, but hey, that's okay. That's okay. Just go home. Nice. So, yeah, the rails are... I think this is aluminum. I'm pretty sure it's aluminum. So it's an aluminum... It'd be a cat cam. I know. The cat's all over the place, though. It'd be hard to get a cam. This isn't Steve's stream, so I can't just, like, put the cat in a box and point the camera at it. Every YouTube channel needs a pet. Yes, this is the pet. Of course. Thank you. Ginger is very fluffy. Ginger has 5 toes. Or not 5 toes. Yeah, I think 5. Like one extra little bean on each paw. So very, very, very big paws. General consensus, do you like Kingroon? I like it, and I'm just getting into... I'm wrapping up the pros about the printer, and we're going to get into the cons. So you joined at the right time. So yes, to summarize, they're linear guides. They are steel rods, so kind of like what a Prusa uses. Think about that. Hardened steel rods pressed into an aluminum extrusion. And then the carriage is metal wheels. They're like inverted V wheels, so they're inverted V wheels. I think there's a name for it, but those are inside of a carriage and they apply pressure. So it's like instead of your typical Ender 3 where it has the 3 V wheels on the outside, this has the 3 V wheels on the inside pressing out, but it's metal on metal. So with a little bit of lubricant, this is a smooth running system, pretty low friction, and it's stiff. So like I can try to move this, hard to show, but like I cannot torque this tool head. This is solid, but super loose. So I think this system, if it lasts, it's probably the best way to design a printer. I'm not gonna lie, this will definitely replace V-wheels and potentially linear rod printers because it uses the frame as the guide. I think you see this in some Delta printers. So you have this going all the way up, so it just uses the 3 combo extrusion slash like rails. SG bearings or U slot bearing. It's an SG. It's an SGR, and this is an SGR 15. I'm not quite sure much about them. I've tried looking up these, and they're not super common. At least around here. They use the more industrial settings. I don't know how expensive they are, but this is a cheaper printer. And I've seen more expensive printers, new, that have V-wheels. So the main benefit of them is that the motion guide is the frame. So you don't need anything else. This is screwed onto the whatever this adapter plate is for the linear or the lead screw, and that's bolted on to the other carriage that's on this. So it's this extrusion SG rail, there's these two rails, and then the bottom there's typical extrusion, and on the Y we have a nice long one going down here, bolted down on the base. The whole thing is seemingly rigid. When we install Clipper on this in the future, we'll run some input shaper tests and see how good the response is. But this is the reason why I got the printer. No V-wheels, there's no maintenance. Maybe a little bit of lubricant, but even the lubricant, you just apply it to this rail. It's all external. There's no ball bearings. So it's a much, much, much better printer for consumers. I can say with confidence that you can buy this, and assuming that it's tensioned correctly, it'll just work out of the box. Awesome, right? Did it have to adjust the wheel tightness? The X is fine. The Y seems a little more suspicious. It seems like it has some extra play in it, but I haven't noticed any major issues in the Y, besides a little bit of ringing. But ringing wouldn't, that wouldn't be affected by a super loose carriage, or maybe it could, but we'll check it out when we install Clipper. When we start getting this thing going faster, we'll mod it and do some stuff to it. But yeah, everything seems really good, really solid from the box, from the factory. But yeah, so that's pretty much the good stuff of the printer. And now it starts to get a little bit more, I don't want to say downhill, but I'll stay down for this, buddy, sorry. It starts to get a little more rough. And some of these are just maybe quirks or stuff that's not ideal. So this is the bad section. This is stuff that could probably be improved pretty easily. Not a game changer, game breaker, just stuff that I would like to see changed. So no Z baby stepping. On a lot of printers, when you adjust the Z offset, aka how close the nozzle is to the bed, you can have a specific setting in the firmware that allows for, it's called baby stepping. It's built right into Marlin. You can move the Z up and down just a little bit. It supports a really high resolution. Welcome in SB Games. And sorry if I missed anyone, I'm trying to focus more on doing the actual review for this slightly different format. Let me know what you think in the comments below. We actually have comments now. Pretty cool. Leave a comment, like and subscribe. YouTube. But yeah, no Z baby stepping, so in my opinion, it's super difficult to get a great first layer without doing a couple test prints. And even then, you have to manually re-level the bed every time you have to adjust the Z offset. So you can't just do the bed leveling and then print. You have to do the bed leveling and then adjust the offset, so that kind of negates the whole point of leveling. I guess if you used Chuck's, the Filament Friday auto leveling probe thing, then that could be a huge benefit for a printer like this without a probe, and one that you might need to consistently level. It's always an option, but out of the box, Z baby stepping is not enabled. And of course, a lot of this stuff you can just change with a firmware update, and we'll get to that as well. No probe, not as necessary on a glass bed. Probes are nice for PEI, where you'll see a little more variation in the layer height, especially in the corners. So a probe is not necessarily needed. In this setup, it's going to be perfectly fine. The glass bed by default is held on by these clips. Okay, so you'll see these on Enders. They're just glass retention clips. That's all. But when they're on the printer, it's very loose. It's like not tight at all. So I ended up having to install binder clips. To give you an example, this is the bed with 2 of the clips on it. Like, the clips don't do anything. Even with 4 of them, they're extremely loose. So with high acceleration, this bed can move all over the place. I guess maybe if you installed one on each side, but I don't like them. I'd rather install, a clip on each side, 1, 2, and now it's pretty much on there, locked. I didn't use my glass bed on my Ender very much. I switched right over to PEI, so I wasn't as experienced using these, but I can say these ones are not great. Maybe they're a little tighter. Is there even room on the controller board for a probe? So the tool head, there is mounting slots on either side that you can install a probe on, and I think they even have instructions on how to. But, oh, on the controller board, yes, they definitely do. The controller board is quite nice. It's a KP3 board. It's pretty much fully fledged. There's even a spare stepper slot on it. So if you want to add a 5th stepper driver in the future, you can just throw one in. It doesn't connect via UART. I tried to use the PT1000 amplifier on it. It did not work. So you could, in theory, drive each Z-axis independently if you wanted to use a gantry tilt or something. So I might look into that into the future. Let me know. Could use pliers. I tried. I did. And even when they're tight, it still doesn't hold great. And that's out of the box, right? I'm trying to demonstrate what you get out of the box. And even with a little bit of effort, these are not tight. I don't like them. Maybe you can buy extra ones online, or binder clips work perfectly fine. When you see people with binder clips, that's why to actually hold the bed in without it moving. Okay. No PID tuning. The firmware on this printer is very, very limited. It's not running Marlin. It's very, very, very basic. Almost no functions. There is a bed leveling script on it for some reason. But besides that, it's as the little information you could possibly need to run a 3D printer. So no PID tuning means that if you install a hardened steel nozzle on here, it's going to produce incorrect temperatures, or might not be able to keep up with the right temperatures. I don't know if it's, I think it's PID tuned out of the box or has a stock profile. I forget, but I did have to hook this printer up to my computer. I had to download and install Pronterface, and I had to run the hot end PID tuning for the printer through my computer. So it's possible, and it's not too complicated, but it's not something I expect the average consumer to do. Maybe the design for a different thickness. I tried my Ender clips on here, and they did not work. They were too small. Does the firmware recognize the pause for filament change? No. I tried that. It just kind of ignores it. Or it pauses and then immediately resumes. It just does not work. So no filament changing out of the box. You can just manually pause it though and then change the filament that way. But that's a giant pain. So the bed, what's really interesting is the firmware does not have the ability to PID tune the bed. So it uses bang bang, which means that the heater is 100% on or 100% off. That's my interpretation of it. And because of that, if you're running a PEI sheet or a thin glass or something, it can cause Z fluctuations because of the expansion and cooling of the heater, which is kind of interesting. And it's common knowledge now that bang bang is not recommended for 3D printers. You should PID tune both the hot end and the bed. That's pretty standard. But the glass bed, because it's so thick, it's not affected as much. That's my understanding. And I haven't seen any major issues in the prints. Like, they seem pretty good, pretty average, even from PID tuned printers. So if I install a PEI sheet, which I'm going to, I have one around here somewhere, I will probably... Let me know. For the upgrades in this printer, I plan on doing the PEI sheet, a BL Touch, and upgrading the firmware. Do you want to see that as a dedicated video where I spend more time getting good close-up shots of it, or do you want me to do it during a live stream? I can do either, and regardless, it'll both get done, and I need to do it soon. So I'm sick of this glass, and it has an issue, which I will point out. So yeah, no PID tuning. If you want to PID tune the hot end, which I recommend you do, it has to be done via prompter face. Standalone video, okay. That I was thinking too. The SGR carriages are hard to, if you have to tension them, they're pretty difficult. You have to remove the entire thing that's connected to, like essentially you disassemble the whole printer, and then you have to have a special tool. It reminds me of a circular saw, like the two-tooth little blade, and maybe even one of those would work in here, but it's hard to do if you don't have the tools. It's almost impossible. There's different ways of doing it, but this isn't a common rail, so there's not a lot of tutorials on it. Essentially, it's just very hard if you have to, like if this came really loose and you had to tension it, it would be very difficult compared to V-wheels, which you just crank a little nut on it. And linear rails and rods do not need any tensioning. They'll always have the same tension because they're a fixed tension. The fans on this printer are a little noisy, and specifically the hot end fan, when you turn on the printer, maybe I can get this to the show. I'm going to turn off my noise filtering and turn on the printer. Music for a second. Was it on? Did I unplug the printer? Yeah, I have this kind of jankly wired, and you will see in a minute. No power. Okay, well, we'll have to troubleshoot that. Not getting anything. Very fun. I'd love to see that. And yeah, we'll talk about the power that's in the ugly section. And you've kind of noticed this whole setup. Yeah, there's a reason for it. Okay. What was I saying? The noisy fans. Yeah, if the printer powered on, I would be able to show you the fans. The hot end fan whines. It sounds like death when you turn it on. It goes away, but every single one of these tool heads, regardless of the printer, whatever the fans they're using, they have this weird issue that they kind of need to warm up. It's plugged in the wall. I'll be honest, I'll have to I'll have to check, but yeah, it should be plugged in. Like, I don't see a reason why it wouldn't be working. I'll check underneath too. I'd like to move it around a bit. And then the 5015 fan, which is pretty nice to see a 5015 cooling. One 5015 is pretty much all you need for PLA in this configuration. Two of them is nice, but not needed, especially for these speeds. But at really low RPM, it has some issues with noise. It sounds pretty bad. It has a filament runout sensor. A lot of people want a filament runout sensor, but man, is this thing hard to load. I installed their like Bowden clip system, where it has a Bowden clip or a Bowden connector on each side, and then you run your tubing up. But it gets jammed in the middle of the sensor. It kind of gets stuck. So it takes a couple tries to actually get the filament through it. And not only that, but you cannot disable the filament sensor in the firmware. You have to shove a piece of filament in there in order to disable it. So for people that don't want to use the filament runout sensor, you have to use it in this configuration. And it's just a pain to load filament, and it even has the potential of causing issues where it'll think there's no filament. I haven't run into that, but I've heard a lot about these, and if like a plug becomes disconnected or something, you've always had trouble loading yours. Yeah, you had to like curve it a specific way, you had to cut it a specific way. It's not straightforward. It's not fun, I'll say that. And changing filament is one of the more tedious processes on 3D printer. That's the only process you really need to do. It's just level your bed and load filament. So if the filament loading process is a pain, then you're probably not going to have a great experience with the printer. The screen location is not amazing. It's okay, but it's not amazing. If I have the bed extended like this, and I'm trying to access the screen, I have to be standing on that side, and it's kind of low. It'd be nice to have it above the bed, so you can actually see what you're doing. Or, like a lot of these printers, have it in the very front. But what they did, instead of having a plate that comes up to here, they shrunk the entire chassis. It's very, very thin. It's like this thin. Not much at all. It's like, like literally this thick on this axis for the base. Which is great because it'll fit on a lot more platforms. For example, I had another 300 bed slinger. It was a Wanho D9. It was huge. The frame was absolutely massive, which is great for a printer that size, but it took up so much space. So it has the same build volume, but it's a lot more compact, which I really like. But the screen is not placed well. And then the rear power switch, oh man. So the power switch is located here in the back, like here. So when the bed is here, you have to reach around and under to grab it. You can't reach from the back. You cannot reach from that side. You have to come around this side to find the power switch. So if it's set up in a position where maybe there's a wall here, it's almost impossible to turn off power. And if you're having an issue, maybe don't say a fire, something catches on fire for whatever reason, you shut the printer off. You can't unplug it, and you can't even access the power switch. You have to go to to the wall. So I want to see more power switches on the front, even if it's like a redundant switch, like a secondary inline switch. Put one on the front so people can turn off and on the printer and have it lit up. And that's pretty much it for the bad. Not too bad. Everything can be kind of changed or modified. Overall, not too bad. Now here is the ugly. Before I do that, does anyone have any questions in chat? I'm gonna see if this is actually plugged in too. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll be right back. And does anyone else have this printer? I've seen a couple of people buy it because I recommended it. I gave them, the same advice I always do. Until I have a lot of hours on the printer, I can't really tell you yes or no, this is going to be amazing. But I liked it, so I used it. Bought it. And I have to think, yeah, this wasn't plugged in the wall. I'm running an extension cord to it because I have a lot of printers here and they will not run off the same circuit. No questions, but I'm going to rewatch this. How long do you plan the YouTube reviews normally? I'm going to say about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on what time I start. So this one I was planning on going from 10:30 to midnight my time, Eastern, which I should be able to get through pretty easily. Only have a couple more things to talk about. I'll take questions and then we'll call it a day. I don't want them to be super long because I want it to be watchable. I want to be able to ask or answer questions and kind of focus on the specific content. And then a lot of nights I'll just go live on Twitch after, so we'll carry the party over to Twitch and maybe we can discuss stuff, go deeper into it. If you want to see something very specific, I can do that too. So the ugly. Well, we'll start with the power supply. Why the heck do I have this power supply? It's not the one that came with the printer. This is actually a really nice Meanwell. It's a 350 watt fanless slim power supply, which works very well when it's actually plugged into the wall. Oh, there we go. Can you hear that? Yeah, can you hear that? That's the fan for the hot end. And that's running all the time. I do have the music back on, but you should probably hear it a little bit. I'll pause it. Yeah, it's not pleasant. If you Google KP3S fan noise, you'll get the same thing. Not ideal. Yeah, there it is. Okay. I'll turn back on the noise removal too, so you don't have to hear that. But it's gone. It's just the normal, like, whirling noise. Which is fine, but, like, the startup, if you're trying to, let's say, 3D print in a... at night or something, right? If you're trying to print somewhere where you need to be reasonably quiet, that's going to be very loud. That could wake someone up. Typical fan noise isn't too bad, but I just don't like that. Is the stock PSU fan always on? I checked, and yes, it does spin. It does spin. And I was gonna do a measurement where I recorded the voltage levels on the printer and kind of monitor what event happened when it turned off. But I'm guessing the stock power supply either has an error or is defective, meaning it has protection built in. All power supplies have over temp, over current protection, and they'll shut off when it exceeds a specific value. So I'm guessing it's one of those sensors that's tripping, causing the printer to shut off mid-print and kind of restart. But at the same time, like the resume mode doesn't work on the printer. So it doesn't resume a print after the power glitches or something. There's something going on with that stock power supply. And when I run the printer off of this power supply, perfectly fine. I can print all this stuff, no problem. Zero issues at all with a quality power supply. So my recommendation to Kingroon is, I know you have your fancy looking power supply. Either revise it, because other people do have this issue. If more than one person has the same issue, it's probably the product. Just saying. Get a different power supply. Get a cheap Meanwell power supply. Like this thing right here. Here's a Meanwell 350. These are not expensive. I understand that every single cent counts, but on the power supply, you do not want to cheap out. This thing has plenty of room to fit in here. There's so much empty space in the bottom of that chassis. So much empty space that you can just take one of these, throw it anywhere, and have it work fine. So I did reach out to Kingroon. They said they would send me a new power supply. I have not got it yet. I don't know if it's shipping directly from China and it just takes 10 years to get here, but I haven't received it yet, so this is how the printer is working in its current state. It's a little sketchy wiring. I have exposed mains. It's not ideal. A disclaimer, I am a not licensed electrician, but I'm an electrical engineer. I know what I'm doing, and I do everything as safe as I can. But at the same time, someone has to replace their power supply. You cannot just swap out the stock power supply because it's an all-in-one unit with the inlet connected to the supply. So, ugly is that my power supply, it works, I get power, but it's very noisy. We checked it on the oscilloscope. It's about plus or minus 1 volt ripple, which that's not good. So you get up to 25 volts and down to 23 volts. I was very surprised to see that much ripple. Like 1 volt peak, so 2 volts peak to peak ripple. It's claimed to be around, I think, 100 millivolts ripple, and it is not that. So either the power supplies are defective out of the box, they're poorly designed, there's something wrong with them. They look great. If you go back and watch the unboxing, I praised the power supply because of how good it looked. But looks mean nothing about quality and features. So yeah, stock power supply. If they don't send me one, I'll just buy a cheap Meanwell or steal it off another printer. I think I have another one lying around. I can just throw in this power supply, design a mount for it, and get the right stuff, install it. This will be much better. Turn it off. Turn off the printer. The touchy inlet. This is how it always is. I have it electrical tape, so it's all good. Hey, decide to run the printer. Stop stealing parts and... Yeah, I know. Actually, this power supply was supposed to be used in one of my custom printers. I think I was going to use it in Simple Core, but my Simple Core is using another Meanwhile that I had for another printer. So this is nice to have. It's nice and small. Yeah, so stock power supply just bad, and they haven't sent me a new one, and that's like the whole printer. So I'm worried that anyone that's not technical, and even people that are technical, I do not recommend messing around with power supplies and stuff like that. So your printer is done. It's dead if your power supply goes, for a lot of cases. So you have to return the printer. It's a huge process. This is not small, not easy to return. So, and their support is, they don't have the, they don't have parts in the US, so they can't just send you parts for it. And I don't know what they would honestly do if you had an issue. So your mileage may vary. I've been in contact with them. I brought up a couple of the points I'm about to show you, and they kind of just shrugged it off, but not in like a negative way, more of a inexperienced way. So they're a very inexperienced company. They're trying to make good stuff, but they just need a little bit of help. So that's why I'm trying to kind of guide them in the right direction. Hopefully they're watching, because I have a lot of a lot of issues with the printer. So another issue is the wiring. So there's 3 main wires that are problematic. This one right here, the X wire. By default, it's not attached to the filament guide. There's no instructions on attaching it to the reverse Bowden tube. And by default, it sags really low. It's a big cable, and when it retracted like this, it can go all the way down here and just sits there. So, ironically, it'll sag over the screen. You can't access the screen when the cable's on there. Also, the bed's right here. So if the cable was at this location, the bed is moving, it can actually snag onto the bed. That's not good. There's no guide to the cable. It's not designed in a way that it wouldn't touch anything. So this is a working, functional, way to manage the cable, but even then, I don't like it. It's just, we call this jank. It's too jank for me. And when it comes to wiring, like, I do analyses on electrical safety for my job, and this could be a safety hazard. I get it, it's not super powerful, not high voltage, but it doesn't take much. You can look up 3D printers catching on fire. Old 3D printers have a lot of issues because of poor wiring and lack of protection. So the fact that the cables can snag is pretty bad. On the back, I can move the printer a bit. There's this ribbon cable, and by default, it's not in this clip. I 3D printed, you can't really see it, but I 3D printed a clip for it. It came with the printer on the file, but it's over here. but the stock cable dangles like a lot. It has a lot of play. It just kind of sits here. And once again, guess what? It's in the path of the bed. It can catch onto the bed. I actually had it catch onto the bed during one of my prints. So I immediately had to print this and install it. The actual cable, the connection seems solid. The ribbon cable doesn't connect to the tool head. It connects to this base, terminates here, and then it goes out into this cable. So not the worst setup by any means, but definitely not the best. Anytime where the cable can come in contact with the bed and the part, I don't like that. It does not seem safe. Even Focus has it better, where they have the cable nicely routed up the printer and it comes back down. So it's constrained. Whether or not it works great, that's a different question, but at least they tried to contain the cables. So yeah, this whole cable setup, not ideal. So the final wiring issue with this printer, and this is kind of a big one, the power inlet. I'm not really going to be able to show this off on stream. I'd have to tip over the printer and zoom in on it, but the wires going from the power supply into the main board are not your typical terminal connector. So maybe I can show you the overhead camera what I'm talking about. The MakerDeck clock. Sub to MakerDeck on Twitch. 24-hour live stream of 3D prints. Pretty cool. So here is a typical Creality board. Okay? The power inlet is this green connector right here. What is MakerDeck? I don't know. This is a typical connector. It's a screw terminal. You shove the wires in and you screw down on it from the top. That's ideal because it holds the wire in place, right? You can't tug it out. What this printer has is very similar to a fan header. So, you know how you plug in a fan into one of these slots? Well, the whole power for this printer goes into one of those. And it's not clipped in, so it can just unplug. I'm assuming it's properly rated, but I don't trust 300 watts or 200 watts or so going through one of those connectors with you know, no constraint, because all it takes is a loose connection, which builds up heat to start a fire, and we don't like fires, so that is one of the, you know, fire hazards. Oh, we have a fourth one. Yeah, we have a fourth special edition wiring issue. Most of the issues on the printer are the wiring. And that's one of the things you cannot change. You're not going to be changing any of the wiring on the printer. It would take a lot of effort, and definitely something that a regular consumer won't even try to do. So this is what the ugly section's for, right? It's all stuff that you can't fix as a consumer. All right, I guess maybe the next one. So the next issue is protection. The built-in firmware doesn't have a lot of the typical Marlin protection features, meaning you can turn on the hot end in the bed to 100% power and leave it running. There's no timeout, it'll infinitely run. Okay, that's not ideal, because you can accidentally, you know, forget to, you know, let's say I'm preheating my hot end to change a spool out, and oh, I get a phone call, I run away. This thing can be heating forever. At least what I've tested, it just stays on. And I've actually forgotten about it. Oh shoot, I left my printer on. Something could, you know, fall onto it. It's a very hot end. The bed maybe, you know, can't get to the most hot, or it's not gonna get the most hot, but still not good to have something running uncontrollably. And I can just demo it live, actually. So let me go into the last and probably worst part of the printer. Something that you cannot reasonably fix, and something that is make or break for the printer. There's a young kid that lost his life with his printer recently. It's unacceptable. Yes. I keep seeing there are more and more stories of people dying because of 3D printers. I'm not saying that they're cheap, but a lot of them are poorly designed. They're designed around cost. Printers are becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and with them, safety features are becoming more and more kind of sparse. Everyone thinks they can just pump out a 3D printer and not think about the safety. And it's a good thing to have a lot of options, but a bad thing to have a dangerous printer. So at this point in time, I do not recommend this printer. It works well. I do not recommend it until a future iteration comes out. Now, if you're an experienced printer and you have the right fire suppression and you have the right setup, it could be a great option for you, especially if you mod it, replace all the stuff that has issues. But these things I'm talking about are not super easy. Now, the firmware can be upgraded. You can add in the protection. That's fine, but there's no hardware protection from some of this stuff too. Your printer stays on for 12 hours sometimes when you're away, nothing happens. Yeah, even then, you're really not supposed to walk away from your printer. You should always be at your printer or have a way of monitoring it remotely. And when you can't monitor it remotely, you should have a way of killing it, killing the power to the printer while it's not there. These things are not toys. They can burn your house down. They can kill you. They're not just things you buy and play around with. As much as everyone likes to think about it, it's a CNC machine for consumers. They're not for the faint of heart. It's great technology, but at this point in time, there's very few printers that are recommendable to everyone. Even the Bamboo, with all of its auto features, there's still a lot of extra stuff you have to do to it to make it run. Even Prusa, great printer, is very reliable, but it's the same thing. It's just a CNC machine that it does have a lot of safety features and is built very well, but at the end of the day, it's a very hot nozzle spewing molten plastic. And having this in your house, there are risks that you have to take. You only have a stream call on so you can monitor them. Yep, I do the same. I have a webcam hooked up that I can monitor remotely, and I typically don't print them away. If I'm running to the store, okay, sure, I'll have a print running. I know which printers are reliable and which ones aren't, so I keep the reliable ones running. And even then, you can think your printer's reliable and you can run into issues. TLDR, keep an eye on your printer. Have a way of checking in. MakerDeck is a great way to stream your prints, but it's not a reliable solution for monitoring your prints. There's a bit of a difference there. Didn't know you had YouTube. Yes, so this is my first YouTube stream. Like I said, I've wanted to kind of just do streams around YouTube, have a conversation about more serious topics, and do all of my build series on here. So I'm building a Voron 2.4 coming up next month. I'll want to stream that on here, but for most content, I'll probably do it on Twitch. We'll see. We'll see. I want to get your feedback in chat. Do you want to have more of a Twitch experience with all kinds of fun drops and games, etc.? Or do you want to have a more serious stream? I'll have chat popped up on here, but it's going to be pretty much like this, right? Just me talking, maybe an extra webcam with my face, but pretty basic. Let me know which direction you want me to take my channel, because I'd want to produce a lot of rewatchable content. A lot of the stuff I do, people can benefit from, but if I'm just streaming on Twitch, I'd have to upload it to YouTube, kind of cleaned up a bit. So this is easier for me, and hopefully just as enjoyable for you. You printed a camera mount so you can stream to MakerDeck. Nice! Yeah, see, that's perfect. Scripted. videos, wild live streams. Okay, yep, that's exactly what this is. Both, yep. That's what I'm gonna do. I'll just do my more serious topics on here, or more scripted, aka or more rewatchable stuff. So when I do a build where companies send me products, I will do that on here. If I'm just doing stuff for fun, I'll do it on Twitch. And speaking of Twitch, I will go live for Twitch for a bit after this. So I'm going to kill the stream when I'm done and switch over to Twitch, and we'll be doing a filament giveaway for PolyMaker. I did not have a way of setting it up on here. I don't know. I don't have the right bot set up for it, so I don't know how I can easily do that without collecting all of your information and putting in a form. Only gonna stream. Only going to Twitch to Ginger. Yeah, Ginger, she might come back down. So, we'll do a giveaway on Twitch, okay? But not on YouTube for this stream. In the future, I'll have that set up. So, let's demonstrate the worst part about the printer. Ready? I'm preheating the bed. Let's put it to 60 or something. It's on. The bed is on. It's at 100% power. It's heating up. Nothing wrong there. But, how is it heating up? Seems pretty typical. It has a PCB bed. It even has a thermal insulator on the bottom. So it's insulated on the bottom. Seems to work pretty well. But check out this. This is the back of the printer. This is the cable going into the back of the printer. The cable on the back of the printer can be unplugged because it's hot swap. So I can take this printer while it's heating up, or this cable while it's heating up, and unplug it. And it sparks nice and neat. And it is still trying to heat. It's reading minus 48 out of 60. It's still trying to heat. It's still on. You can run a print and unplug the bed, and it would still print with this whole thing unplugged. And that's not even the worst part. And I can, replug it back in, whatever. Get a nice spark going. I can unplug it. Oh, you saw that one. Oh boy. Oof. Yeah, this not okay. Not at all. Now, I did a print, and then I unplugged it, and it did seem to kill the print eventually. I don't know what the issue was, but I think it only works when it's printing. But the fact that it can unplug that easily, like, it takes as simple as getting caught on the motor and coming off. This is a literal fire hazard. You can see the sparks coming off of it. This is not low amperage at all. So we actually showed this off a while ago, and everyone was kind of shocked of how bad that was. For reference, most printers have a dual, two cables coming in, and they're soldered right to the bed. This one has a connector that is soldered to the bed. But instead of using two properly sized cables, it has two hot, two negative, and then the sensor cables. And the worst part is the only physical connection to the bed is this connector right here, soldered on with 6 little connections. That's it. There's zero strain relief whatsoever. If this thing prints, back and forth for many, many hours, this connector is gonna start wiggling. and you don't want to put any pressure on a solder joint. So the whole thing is just connected via a solder joint. Sure, it's really nice to be able to move the bed. I'm not going to deny that. It's nice to just take the bed and completely remove it. But it is not worth the fire hazard of whatever setup this is whatsoever. So my recommendation to Kingroon is to switch over to a bed that is soldered on and then use a proper strain relief, meaning there's a physical connection to the bed itself, not the wire, connected to the wire so that the only flex is the actual wire itself. When you flex the connector, that's when issues will happen. Now, I talked to them and they said, oh, well, there hasn't been an issue yet, so it's fine. I don't take that as a proper answer. They also said that they gunked up this connector right here, which is great. Let's unplug it again. Oof, nice spark that time. Yeah, this connector is all gunked up. I have very, very little doubts that this would be the failure point. But this connector right here is the issue. And I'm gonna kill this. I don't actually want to damage this too much because I do want to use the printer. So what am I gonna do? I might try to design something that connects to the screw post right here, and it comes out and then has a strain relief. I might permanently hot glue the whole thing together just to keep it solid. I could even completely remove the connector and then solder on the wires. Like, I could do a bunch of stuff. I don't know what route I'm going to go yet, but this is not a good thing. Thought you thought there was a print? Yeah. No, just a fire shark. So yeah, what do you think about that? And the fact that, you know, like the Ender 3 can get caught on the motor, etc., and cause issues. It's just bad. It's not even ugly. It's a fire hazard. I cannot recommend this printer in its current state. I am amazed by the quality of the printer. Like, look at this thing. It's beautiful. Very, very little flaws. I don't know. It's good. I can get really amazing prints off the printer. One minor bonus bad. See that black spot right there? That's the bed. You see this white spot right here? That's not the bed. So, removing this print, which is a silk filament, properly offset, peeled off the bed. So this bed is done. I killed it. I could flip it around. The backside is just regular glass. So, yeah, the bed, just, yeah, there you go. It's peeling up. Which is fine because I do have a PEI sheet for this to install. And it's so much easier to remove stuff from PEI sheet. If you're just using glass, it's great that it's flat, but if you have a proper setup with a probe and you're capable of running a bed mesh, use a PEI sheet. So much better. You just put a skirt so you make sure it's one's level. Yep, you can do that too, but that's serious bed heat. Yes, this thing, people have told me, oh, just, you know, put it in a freezer or, you know, just wait and it'll pop off. No, not with this, I'm not going to pronounce it right, but this type of coating on the bed makes everything stick. I had the same issue with my Ender 3. Everything stuck to the bed. So if you want a smooth surface, this isn't even smooth, it's textured. If you want a real smooth surface that has part removal, get a PEI sheet that's double-sided, one side textured and one side flat. You can use it for any material. You can choose if you want it to be a little bit textured or completely smooth and flat. That's the ultimate choice. West 3D, link in description, they do sell PEI sheets. They're branded via whatever the Voron guys use. But those would be a solid upgrade versus any of these types of beds. I think they even have this size. This is an Ender a CR10 sized bed. I think it's 320 by 310. The three of the prints come off the magnetic surface. Yeah, any of those sheets are going to be significantly better for adhesion. Not adhesion, but layer removal. I don't know. Would you rather have a print that doesn't stick or a print that doesn't come off? Yeah, it's something flat, thin and flat. I printed this disc off right here. I was trying to repair the trash can by printing off the top of it, but this thing took days to remove. I tried everything. It was glued to the bed. So just keep that in mind. And what do you think? What do you think of the printer? Again, motion system, amazing. I want to see this on more printers. But all the wiring, bad. And in some cases, a actual fire hazard. But the print quality is good, but the printer might burn your house down. I don't know. I will send this video to Kingroon. Kingroon, if you're watching, please reach out to me. I want to resume the conversations that I'm having with you. I know it's slow, but I do want to talk to an engineer. I want to go into further... I don't know what more detail I can go into. This is pretty much as detailed as it gets. But there needs to be changes if I'm going to recommend this printer. KP3S, definitely my recommended printer from $200. For sure. This one, for under $400, I would recommend it if they fixed all the issues. I'll say that. So, on that note, that's all I really have for you today. Thank you for joining. I will be switching over to Twitch, so I think I have the... Do I have the link in the description? Do I have the link? Well, you can click the Twitch VOD and then go there. But I did not have the giveaway set up. So I'll be doing that on Twitch just to make sure you guys get your filament. So I'm going to quickly switch over to that and we can further discuss and do whatever you want. But that's all I have for you. You think it's a solid choice? Okay. How much is this spool? The Hedgehog. This wasn't too much. So this is pretty much hollow with a lightning infill. So it used probably 200 grams or maybe like 250. Like it's pretty light. It's not heavy. Like it's as heavy as some of the other prints, but it's nice and big. I really like this model. Very cute and very easy to print. Just gorgeous, gorgeous. All right, well, this has been a Hedgehog Make stream over on YouTube. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully I was able to either sway you to purchasing this printer or informing you to kind of wait until there's a better one. Unfortunately, there's not many other options when it comes to you know, printers with a solid motion system. There's something like the SV06, which just launched and it has linear rods, but even then it's not going to be as rigid as this type of system. So in the future, stay tuned. I will be upgrading this bed very soon because it has a giant hole in the middle. I'll be upgrading it to a PEI sheet. I'll do a video on that. I'll be adding a BL Touch. I will be upgrading the firmware to Marlin 2, adding in the safety features and seeing if we can kind of fix some of the issues just by installing the right safety parameters. And then in the future, I'll be also installing Clipper on here, doing some measurements, seeing how well it works, seeing how fast we can push it, and then going from there. So, once again, thank you for watching. Stay tuned, make sure to like and subscribe. Follow me on all my socials. Links are down in the description. For those of you who are sticking around, I will be on Twitch after. Have a great night. Bye.